When you think of voting, you probably imagine ticking boxes, long lines at polling stations, or maybe even an "I voted" sticker. Exciting? Not exactly. But what if I told you voting started with pottery and pebbles? Let's take a trip from ancient Greece, where voting was literally about scratching names onto pieces of pottery, to today's secret ballot. This journey from "I scratch" to "I vote" is way more entertaining than you might think. And back in the day, you might just get kicked out of town if people didn't like you. Yeah, things used to get a little wild in the world of ballots. Let's take it back to 5th century BCE Athens, the birthplace of democracy. But spoiler alert, it wasn't as chill as you might think. Voting didn't mean picking the next ruler. It meant deciding who you wanted to banish from the city. Yep, they were all about out of sight, out of mind democracy. Citizens, only free men, of course, used pieces of broken pottery called ostraca to vote on who should get the boot. They'd scratch the name of someone they thought had too much power, and if enough people voted for them, that person was ostracized, banished for 10 years. This was the original survivor, without the $1 million prize. Fun fact, this is where the word ostracism comes from. Voting meant survival back then. Then we have the Romans who thought, let's make this a bit more private, shall we? They came up with the first secret ballot in 139 BCE. Voters used wooden tablets covered in wax to inscribe their choices and drop them into urns, early ballot boxes. This was the Roman Republic's attempt at keeping things under wraps so bribery and coercion wouldn't ruin the fun. Kind of like passing notes in class, but with much bigger stakes. Moving on to medieval Europe, where voting was basically like a public talent show. Everyone saw who you voted for. You'd vote vocally in front of everyone. No pressure, right? And the process was more like a show of hands than dropping anything in a box. Not much privacy here, folks. But in places like Venice, they got a little more creative. They used a lottery system with small balls or wooden pieces to select officials. And that's where the word ballot, from the Italian word ballotta, comes from, because apparently voting was all about those balls. Fast forward to the 19th century, and voting finally got a makeover with the invention of the Australian ballot. Thank you, Aussies. This was the first time we had standardized, government-printed ballots with all the candidates listed. The best part? You could vote in secret, no more judgmental looks from your neighbors. This new voting style spread like wildfire, transforming elections into the private, paper-based system we know today. From broken pottery to wax tablets to secret ballots, the history of voting is anything but boring. So the next time you drop your vote in a box, remember you're standing on the shoulders of ancient Greeks, Romans, and Venetians, who all had a pretty wild time figuring out how to count those votes.